Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into. But before we get started, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And shout out to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the podcast. Again, shout out to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the pod. Let's go ahead and get right into it, boys and girls. The first thing is obvious. We have to talk about Franz Wagner because he's the most important player right now. Let's be honest, right? The injury updates for Franz Wagner, the road to Berlin. That's what we're calling it for the next 72 hours. The road to Berlin. And the road to Berlin looks wide open. The road to Berlin looks like we have a really good chance of seeing Franz Wagner on the floor. Let me explain. Recently, he spoke on how he's feeling coming after Sunday's game. He had said, I feel good. I've been working really hard the last couple of weeks to get back as soon as I can. Hopefully it will be for Berlin. Regardless if I play or not, it will be a true full circle moment for Mo and I. We read that last episode. Growing up and going as little kids to the gym to watch the pros play, to bring an NBA game is pretty special for us. We're going to try to enjoy every second of it, take it all in, and appreciate the opportunity. We read that already. Here's the thing. Here's what he said after practice yesterday. I think we have to find a little back to our identity. Play a little defense and get back to our half-court offense and be a little bit more effective. As I hear Franz Wagner continue to speak on the court play, he also says health is the most important thing. The reason we're here is him. We shouldn't put too much pressure on the fact that whether he is or isn't playing. Talking about Mo Wagner says we'll enjoy it either way. Actually, playing is the smallest part. We're here driving through the city and seeing our friends and combining our two worlds together. That is the main thing. Love you, Mo, but that's a bunch of hoopla. Here's the truth. I'm glad to hear that Franz Wagner is slowly but surely ramping up. I'm glad to know that we still have one more day before this truly has to get figured out. I think Franz is going to play. And I think he's going to play maybe 17 minutes. I think he's going to show us what we've been missing over the last couple of weeks. And I think against a Memphis Grizzlies team that is spiraling right now, quite frankly, John Morant is on the trade block. Jaren Jackson Jr. might be on the trade block. Vince Williams is on the trade block, apparently. Against a spiraling Memphis Grizzlies team, the Orlando Magic should come out there with Franz, with Mo, with Tristan da Silva, with Paulo Banchero and Desmond Bane, with Anthony Black, and smack the Grizzlies. Period, point blank. We are on Franz watch. And I'm feeling good. I think that Franz is going to be available, and I don't need a lot of minutes from Franz Wagner, y'all. I just want to see the man healthy. I'm not asking him to go out there and put his body on the line. That is not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is just to see him back on the court healthy. I don't care if he gets one transition bucket. If I can see him operate well in the half-court setting, I'm cool with that. But I want to see Franz play, and I want to see him play in front of his people, man. Next up, Sports Illustrated did a coaching grade. They did a couple of other grades as far as a handful of players on the team, but I want to focus on the coach because that's the area that we focused on 2 episodes ago, talking about the panic meter around Jamahl Mosley. Sports Illustrated did a coaching grade for Jamahl Mosley, giving him a C, saying it's been painfully average. It's been a painful. Can y'all tell that I'm excited about the fact that Franz Wagner is about to be back on the floor? Let's start over again. It's been a painfully average season for Mosley, directly influencing the Magic's mediocre record. I'll give him some grace. He's dealt with injuries to 3 of his best players, which hasn't always made his rotations easy. Orlando's depth has been tested. Mosley also has done a better job of leaning into their youth, particularly the Magic's two rookies, Jace Richardson and Noah Pinda, of late. But they have regressed outside of the top 10 defensively while being a middling, albeit better, offense. At some point, as they're in the midst of their easiest stretch, they will have to stack together wins. Yeah, apparently, did you guys know that they are on a streak of 12 straight scenarios of winning a game and then following that up with losing? Oh, yeah, that's just my finesse way of speaking around saying the thing I've said for the last week, which is that they haven't won back-to-back games since the end of November. Yeah, I got to keep saying it because that's a thing. That's a thing. I think a C is exactly where Jamaal Mosley is. I think if I had to answer my own question from 2 episodes ago about me and the panic meter on Jamaal Mosley, I'd be exactly at a 5. I don't think Jamaal Mosley has done enough to lose his job unless things come out related to his interpersonal relationships with individual players on the team. If there is any version of slander in which he may potentially have lost the locker room, that is where my panic meter shoots past 10. But as far as on the court production, the guys who deserve to play have played. He has made the most out of his bench during a trying season where everybody seems to be going down with an injury. Every single player outside of maybe Anthony Black and Desmond Bane, who's in the consistent rotation, has missed time this year. And he is kind of making, he's doing more than making lemonade out of lemons. He's really making lemonade out of like water, quite frankly. Again, like it mentioned, mediocre season. Very mediocre record. But a team that's missed all 3 of their top players in some capacity, never truly on the same timeline unless you want to count the Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner issues right now, which has staggered the lineup in a way that's made it where he's had to almost kind of get an understanding of 3 different versions, maybe even 4 different versions of this team. So I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway, but I do genuinely feel as though it is getting tougher to give him the kind of stretch because of the fact that at the end of the day, guys going to get injured. Guys going to get injured. That does, I mean, it comes with the territory. But at the same time, when it's your top 3 guys, I feel like you just got to give it some grace, right? I feel like at some capacity, you have to give him some grace. So I'm at a 5. If I had to give him a grade, I'd probably give him a C plus at best. Just because the offense is somewhat improved. Again, like you said, albeit not necessarily anything crazy, but being able to get the breakout season that they're getting from Anthony Black paired with what we've been able to see specifically from Noah Pinda as of late are 2 things I'm very, very hype and excited about overall. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on the stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get it right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. Download the app today and use promo code BASKETBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, use promo code BASKETBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries. Underdog, make picks, earn cash. Bleacher Report predicted something that nobody wants to talk about. Bleacher Report predicted something that nobody wants to talk about, but I'm going to be the one to talk about it. Your favorite Orlando Magic podcasts want to make thumbnails strictly of different guys that the Orlando Magic are going to trade for. Shoot, I was one of them. We have an entire series that we will continue, by the way, dedicated to guys that the Orlando Magic could target on the trade block. And most of them are not going to be stars. Most of them have not been stars. Check out the series. You can check through the thumbnails. I have not put anybody too extreme on the trade block outside of maybe when Trae Young was in conversation, but that was more about what his trade value meant as far as the landscape of the NBA and how that affects a team like the Orlando Magic on the trade market. But realistically, from the very beginning of the season, I've said this, and you guys have heard this for those that are my avid subscribers. I have said that I don't believe this Orlando Magic team is going to make a big swing unless it involves trading Jalen Suggs. And I don't believe that if they're going to move from Jalen Suggs, it will be something they do, A, while he's injured right now, because his value is absolute crap. Just being honest. Paired with the fact that I don't think that's a trade they would make in season during a season that has already faced so much turmoil. So it's always been an idea of whether or not this team was going to try to duck the luxury tax now or later. And now makes more sense because you want to try to get this figured out before Paolo Banchero's rookie max extension gets added onto your books. Not trying to figure out how to loophole yourself around it after the number hits. Because it all works the same, but it makes your trades a lot more difficult when you lack the leverage going into any trade transaction where teams know you're trying to cut money. So, Bleacher Report did an entire article on what they believe each team, all 30 teams in the NBA, would do in some capacity this season. And Bleacher Report for the Orlando Magic said it's very easy. They're going to do what they can to trim salary and duck the luxury tax. We're going to read. That's another thing that a lot of these podcasts are not doing is they're not using things like the news and information we're being given in a way that to present things in a manner that's truly realistic. It's picking and choosing wording that sounds good or things that are favorable, but we're going to talk about something that's real here, which is that the Orlando Magic are focused on trying to cut salary. Here's what they say. The Orlando Magic aren't quite as close to their target line as some other teams around the league, but shedding $5.6 million in salary is far from impossible. And there's a pretty obvious trade candidate who could help them erase that gap. And I'm sure you guys know who it is. Jonathan Isaac is making $15 million this season while averaging 10.4 minutes and 3.1 points. Some rebuilding team might be willing to absorb a big chunk of that money in exchange for a second-round pick or two. Knowing that each of the following seasons on that contract are non-guaranteed should make a move more palatable. When you consider how expensive Orlando will be next season with Jalen Suggs still making over $32 million, while Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner will all be over $39 million, delaying that first year in the tax and by extension the repeater tax penalty almost feels urgent. Again, going back to what I said where it makes sense to deal with this now rather than later because things like that repeater tax hit the minute Paolo Banchero's first year of his rookie max extension clears. Other contracts that's set to expire following the season include Mo Wagner and Tyus Jones. Wagner recently returned from an injury after missing a full calendar year following his ACL injury, and Jones has been somewhat underwhelming in his role as a veteran backup point guard. The Magic are filled with young talent such as Anthony Black, Jace Richardson, Noah Penda, and Tristan Da Silva. Parting with these veterans could open up larger roles for these young assets to develop. Do I have to keep explaining this to you guys? Jonathan Isaac is the man out. I told you guys last podcast, Noah Penda over Jonathan Isaac. I'm telling you guys this podcast that if the Orlando Magic are going to try to cut salary, and it feels almost inevitable, and I would love to get Colin Sexton, by the way. That's the player that I'm very interested in. He's been garnering a lot of attention as of late as a potential trade candidate. I've heard his name come up for teams like the Pistons. I think that a team like the Orlando Magic would be a great fit. We've talked about Colin Sexton on the roster beforehand. Feels like an ideal backup point guard that can score, distribute, plays hard on the defensive end. Might not be an elite defender, might not even be an above average defender, but he's somebody that I know will compete on the defensive end at the point guard position off the bench. Would love to go after somebody like that. I'm also saying, hey, Malik Monk's contract, not that far off. Not that far off from Jonathan Isaac. I'm just saying. I'm not saying we're going to land him. I'm just saying it's not that far off. That's all I'm saying. Everyone who loves Jonathan Isaac, I was once a believer like you. I'm just not anymore. And the circumstances around the Orlando Magic set a precedent that tells us that they don't believe in him anymore. Or if it's not that they don't, it's that they can't. They can't afford to. Because at $15 million with a bunch of non-guarantees, it sounds good, but if he gets injured like he normally has done throughout throughout the majority of his career, he has no trade value. He also is only playing 10 minutes a game. So that alone can be its own indication, because let's take the price tag out of it. Because clearly the price tag does not have enough weight to make Jamal Mosley feel the need to play him. You don't hear anybody from upper management saying, you don't hear Jeff Weltman saying, that dude's making $15 million a year, Mosley, you need to play him. So there's no incentive to keep him on the roster at $15 million a year, when even if he were a cheaper player, no one's banging the table for Jonathan Isaac to play at $15 million. I don't know if at a cheaper price point, again, he also is operating off a bunch of non-guarantees, which in a sense almost makes his contract cheaper than $15 million, even though it's not. If anything, the fact that his contract is non-guaranteed is probably part of the reason we're barely playing him. The Orlando Magic are going to get underneath the tax. They're going to get underneath the tax. We're going to reach out to a team like Charlotte. We're going to reach out to a team like the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to reach out to a team like the Utah Jazz. And we're going to get underneath the salary cap. Underneath the luxury tax. The Orlando Magic are a talented team, but they are not a second apron team. This organization has never really been in like the stratosphere of needing to be a second apron team. And they're already teetering right there as it is with all the money that they've invested in the core four, not to mention that Anthony Black has to get paid this summer. This is not a Jonathan Isaac hate bashing. Like, I have nothing against Jonathan Isaac on a personal level. But every time I see the comment sections churn, and it's getting better. You guys are starting to kind of come around to my side of my neck of the woods, so to speak, as far as understanding that Jonathan Isaac's theoretical value and his fully presented value are two totally different things. Jonathan Isaac is a trade chip. Jonathan Isaac is so much of a trade chip that the Orlando Magic are trying to save him from himself to make sure that he's healthy enough to be moved in a trade. Jonathan Isaac will not be on this team at the end of the NBA trade deadline. And I don't think anybody should be shocked when we see that notification come up from Shams Charania that says he's been moved to the Nets or the Hornets or the Jazz or the Pelicans. I'm just not going to be surprised. And neither should you. Last but not least, let's go ahead and read some of these comments from the comment section of the last podcast. And my boy, Luis Rosario, was very active. I'm going to read all of his together because it just makes sense. Shout out to my dog. Shout out to you for being very active in the comment section as usual. This Euro trip is going to be the reset point for this season. It's only all uphill from here on out and into the playoffs. Let's go, Magic. Penda got Dell's double-double the first time he started for Dell. Oh, talking about Wendell Carter. That's enough to make a move from J.I. and give Penda more minutes. I'm telling you, you guys are coming around to my school of thought. The Magic need to tell J.I. that he either resigns, the Magic need to tell J.I. that he either resigns at a lesser pay rate or they are going to send him to any team for a bag of chips and soda. Luis Rosario, you're locked in as far. You're starting to pick up what I'm putting down. AB just needs to come into games sooner for Suggs when either Jalon gets quick fouls or if he gets knocked down by the other team too many times. But we can't bench Jalon or trade him because he's too valuable. And that's in response to something we talked about last podcast where I think a commenter said something about having to have the tough conversation of starting Anthony Black over Jalen Suggs. And my rebuttal to that was that the price tag of Jalen Suggs is just too much to bench him in favor of Anthony Black, even if Anthony Black is due for a relatively hefty payday this upcoming summer. It's not going to justify putting Jalen Suggs on the bench. You're either going to have to trade him or you're going to have to make it work. I do think there's an idea of maybe playing a pseudo six-man role where, again, it's like Anthony, very similar to like Anthony Black would be very similar to like a Lou Williams, where it's like not in play style, but in the format of like Lou Williams comes off the bench. He is not a starter. But when Lou Williams was, one of the better players in the league as far as six men are concerned, teams like the Atlanta Hawks and the LA Clippers felt okay with closing with Lou on the floor. And that's one of those things where maybe Jalen Suggs starts games. Maybe he plays 27, 28 minutes, maybe 30 minutes a game. But he doesn't close games. The final 4 to 5 minutes, maybe that's where Anthony Black closes the games with a Desmond Bane, with Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. Maybe that's how it gets done. But I do think that you have to protect the asset. And I'm not saying that just in the perspective of using him as a trade chip, but like he is one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA. He is one of the best point of attack. He is one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA. He is an improving 3-point shooter. But if he's not healthy, he serves no purpose, and he's consistently not healthy. You have to protect him from himself, and that might involve having to make some tough decisions. Let's read some other comments. Berto the Magician says, you made a great point. This is the pass, the baton / new perspective. Brad Stevens, Ime Udoka, Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown, Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr. Although I'm a big believer that Jackson could have just remained if he didn't have issues with the front office. I have faith in many of Pop's disciples. Joe Prunty, I think, is a good idea. Of course, Joe Prunty is on the staff already, hired as a bit of a pseudo offensive coordinator type. Would be kind of interesting to see how that all works. The Orlando Magic have taken strides offensively this season, but they have fallen back defensively. Does that have anything to do with the influence of Joe Prunty, or does that have more to do with the fact that this team is significantly hurt across the board? Does that have something to do about the effort level being given playing underneath of Jamal Mosley? There's a lot of different questions there, but I do think Joe is an interesting interesting placeholder in the meantime if the Orlando Magic were to make some kind of like drastic move mid-season. Sharp T9E, shout out to you as always active in the comment section, says AB might end up getting starters money, rather it's here or there, whether it's here or somewhere else, if he keeps playing the way he's playing. It better be here. It better be here. I'm sure the Brooklyn Nets would love to throw a bag at him because they don't seem like they're very much in the Jonathan Kuminga sweepstakes. They're going to let Cam Thomas walk this summer. They're looking to move off of Michael Porter Jr. That feels like a very important aspect of it. And maybe that's part of how, maybe that's part of how they land Jonathan Kuminga, or maybe they help facilitate a 3-team trade where like Jonathan Kuminga lands with the Sacramento Kings, which is like where the main rumors are sending him to. But yeah, somebody's gonna pay AB if we don't do it. But he's a restricted free agent. And he's going to be coming off a quote-unquote career year. So he's going to have some leverage, but I do think that I think as a restricted free agent, unless somebody is willing to flat out outbid the Orlando Magic for Anthony Black's services, Anthony Black will be in Orlando Magic long term. Last but not least, D-Lo, Florida, as usual. Shout out to you, my guy. Says, I like the idea of trading for Peyton Watson or Keontae George. The Nuggets are not giving away Peyton Watson after what we just saw after the last week. I'm just letting you know that right now. They were probably not going to move him anyway, but the man just won Western Conference Player of the Week. And I know that might not be a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but like Peyton Watson is just not one of those players you see on the Player of the Week graphic. That's like when Thaddeus Young won it on the Indiana Pacers years ago. Like, it's just not something you expect to see. that, or like when TJ Warren went off in the bubble. Like there's just certain things that you just don't expect. But Peyton Watson has been a really good two-way player for them, especially with Jokic out. And you also mentioned Keontae George. Would love Keontae George. Problem, you say only if we can keep AB. I'll take Keontae George over Jalen Suggs right now due to his injury history. That's also why Utah wouldn't trade him to us. That's probably the biggest part. Having Keontae and being able to keep AB would be insane, and I would love that bench unit a ton. A ton. I would love that bench unit a ton. Or, staggered minutes where AB starts, but then he's able to play next to Keontae George off the bench. But Keontae feels like the future point guard of that team, man. I think unless they land like a Darren Peterson or something, and I see a world where they feel like a Darren Peterson or Cam Boozer team. And I'm not just saying Cam Boozer because his father used to play on the Utah Jazz, even though that would be quite a full circle moment. Keontae George would be dope. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say in the comment section like that in response to something like that. Again, give me some more names as some interesting players we can talk about on the trade block to discuss as potential dream trade scenarios for the Orlando Magic. Again, they have a $15 million contract in Jonathan Isaac. And if they really are feeling frisky, they could move Jalen Suggs. I'm saying they won't because I just don't think it's feasible given the fact that he's already an injured commodity. And I think that they care too much about Jalen Suggs for what he brings to the organization to move him in the middle of the year. It feels like a move you would make in the summer when there's a lot more available options from a trading perspective as far as like first round picks and different things like that. But you can still pair Jonathan Isaac with a Tyus Jones, pair Jonathan Isaac with a Jet Howard, pair Jonathan Isaac with. I wouldn't move Jace, but if you had to use him as a big enough sweetener to be able to get a solid rotational player back, you'd have to at least consider it. Right? You have to at least consider it. You guys let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about all of this, man. I think that the trade deadline for the Orlando Magic is going to be a relatively quiet one, but I think there's a couple of names that if the Orlando Magic, even if they're making a cost-cutting move, there's a handful of players I still would love to see on this team. Give me some more names. I've already shared a few with you across a handful of episodes throughout the series. I think we're on part 9 or 10 now. I believe we might even be on part 10 of that series. So I'll probably do one of those for tomorrow before the Berlin game or as part of the episode going into the Berlin game. But with all that being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And shout out to Underdog Fantasy for always, sponsoring the pod. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.